So let's now look at an example where we have to combine some fractions with different denominators. So we have one denominator has 1 minus secant of x, and one has 1 plus secant of x. So I'll have to multiply this term by 1 plus secant of x over 1 plus secant of x, and I'll have to multiply this term by 1 minus secant of x over 1 minus secant of x. So let's do that. Rewriting the first term, secant of x over 1 minus secant of x. I'll multiply that by 1 plus secant of x over 1 plus secant of x. And then I'll take my minus secant of x over 1 plus secant of x and multiply that by the opposite denominator, 1 minus secant of x over 1 minus secant of x. All right, now I will go ahead and simplify this a bit by distributing the secant of x here. So I get secant of x plus secant squared of x over, I'm just going to leave this the same, 1 minus secant x times 1 plus secant x. And remember, I have a minus here, so I'm going to take my minus secant of x times 1, which will be minus secant of x. And then I will have a plus sign here. So I'm going to essentially have negative secant of x plus, or times negative secant of x, which gives me a plus secant squared of x. And again, this is all going over that same denominator that we wrote, because I can combine them. So if I have secant of x minus secant of x, those two are going to cancel each other out. Then if I have secant x squared, or secant squared of x, plus secant squared of x, that gives me 2 secant squared of x's. And let's try foiling the bottom part. So we have front is 1, outer is secant x, inner is negative secant x, and last is secant x squared, negative secant x squared. So actually my middle terms cancel out, and I'm left with 2 secant squared x over 1 minus secant squared x. Recall that 1 minus secant squared x could be related to the tangent, because we know that tangent squared of x plus 1 is equal to secant squared of x. However, we have a negative secant squared and a positive 1. So let's go ahead and move this 1 over. So in other words, tangent squared of x is equal to secant squared of x minus 1. So notice how this is the opposite of this in terms of signs. So I can make this negative tangent squared of x and make this 1 minus secant squared of x. So that allows me to replace the bottom part with a negative tangent squared of x. So now note that I have 2 times 1 over cosine squared of x over negative sine squared x over cosine squared x, since tangent is sine over cosine and secant is 1 over cosine. Notice that my cosine squareds will conveniently cancel out, so I'm left with a negative, a 2, those can go in my numerator, and I also have a sine squared of x in my denominator. There's actually one more step we can take to simplify that even further. we know that 1 over sine is cosecant. So 1 over sine squared would be cosecant squared. And we are multiplying that by -2. So we could say -2 cosecant squared of x. Notice by looking at our original equation here, or our expression here, we've simplified that quite a bit. Now, it probably will take some getting used to what's the simplest expression. So go ahead and see if you can figure this one out and determine which of these 4 answers matches that expression given.